Hello, welcome to Thank You Kindly, the podcast where, well, actually, I did a terrible job at explaining it, but Geneva really did a great job at explaining it in one sentence. So, Geneva, how would you explain Thank You Kindly in one sentence?
Thank You Kindly is about horrific work stories, hilarious work stories, a bit of pop culture, and everything in between.
Nailed it.
Right on.
This is Geneva. I'm Max.
Hello.
And I'm Zach.
We're your hosts. I kind of want to talk about the first job interview you've ever had. Do you remember your first job interview? Or maybe not even the first. Do you remember your first bad interview where you were like, oh, like, I don't think I'm getting the job?
Yeah, I do. I was a teacher at the time, and I was interviewing at a software company. I was starting to work in software, and I remember I took a couple hours off to go to this interview, and I arrived, I think it'd be about an hour. Like, I don't know, an interview's not usually that long. It was like a first interview. Mm-hmm. And they asked, like, are you good for the next few hours? Like, sorry, like, how long? Just so I know how long I'm here. Like, how long do I need here? And they're like, about 3 hours. I'm like, I would have liked to have known that. They're like, can you still do it? I was like, yeah, I'll make it work. But it would have been nice to know this was 3 hours.
But this was the initial interview.
I had like a 15-minute phone screen, and then I came in for an interview. I had no heads up about the timing. So initially, like right off the bat, I'm like, oh, it's probably not the best impression that I was like annoyed with them. Mm-hmm. And then they're like, the first hour, you're going to do a written test. And then we're going to do about an hour and a bit interview after the test. For context, I have a learning disability, and throughout university, I always LD crew. But I always had like accommodations in university where I got like extra time on tests. Mm-hmm. I got to like type all my answers. Like, I didn't have to write. I got to like use a computer and type my answers. Wasn't great in first year, and when I had my accommodations, it was great. But sat down to write this quiz, and immediately as I started writing it, I'm like, I'm not going to do well on this test. I'm trying to remember the questions, but it was like I can't remember what the questions were, but as I was writing it, I was like, there's no way I'm going to finish this in an hour. Yeah. And I was like rushing through it, and I finished in about an hour. Quick pause. The interview part with questions was first, then I did the test after. Okay. But I was doing the test. I wrapped it up, and at this point I'd been there for like 2.5 hours. I finished this test knowing I'm like, I bombed this test. And then I sat in the room for 5 minutes and no one was coming in. So I ended up leaving like the interview room and looking for like, I can't remember the person's name who was interviewing me. I couldn't find her in the office. Okay. And then I just went up to someone at a desk. I'm like, can you give this to, let's call her Catherine. I can't remember her name. I'm like, can you give this to Catherine? And they're like, sure, we'll give it to her. And then I just left. And I never heard back from them. I ended up sending them an email like that later that night. I'm like, hi, like, thank you for having me come in. I couldn't find anybody when I finished the quiz. Mm-hmm. I gave it to somebody in the office, and they never followed up with me. And then a couple years later, they headhunted me. Like, I was headhunted by one of their recruiters being like, hey, are you interested in working here? Geez. And I was like, candidly, I had a terrible interview experience with you. Yeah. They've reached out to me 2 or 3 times since that interview. This was like 7 years ago. This is what I'm telling you. But they've reached out to me multiple times since for a different job. And one time I gave them the benefit of the doubt, and I was like, sure, like, I'll chat with your team. Right. And then they never followed through with scheduling that interview.
That's so embarrassing.
Yeah.
That's like,
yeah. And I wrote a Glassdoor review, a really bad one.
Good.
But that was really just like a bad interview experience.
But I think it shows that the fact that they like headhunted you after shows that they like clearly didn't just like follow up on their shit in general. Because like, I feel like they would have probably taken a look and been like, oh, like, didn't that guy like fill out the thing and then like just not
a great move that I just let. Like, I should have waited.
Yeah, but I mean, like,
also, but then like I was like, nobody was there.
I was like mad at them, which is like also like not cool. Like, because like
I would be too.
I would be too. I would be too. So you didn't get the job.
I did not get that job.
My first interview was for like retail, but I did have an annoying interview process, kind of like not similar to yours, but like in a way where I was mad at the company. It was a small business. It was a sales job. Because I was working in sales at the time, and I was like, okay, like, I'll chat with these people. I had, in total, I think I had 4 or 5 interviews with them. So the first one was with like the hiring manager, and that one went fine. I couldn't really give them good answers because I didn't want to be in sales. Right. Like, as you guys know, like, I have the personality for sales, but I can't do anything else. And personality in sales can only get you so far.
Gets you.
I feel like it gets you pretty far.
I will say it can get you pretty far.
Yeah.
But you can learn everything else. You can't learn personality.
That is true, but I feel like you also need to be knowledgeable on what you're selling, and I feel like this specific company, it was like selling education essentially. They kept explaining it to me, and I was like, okay, that sounds great. And then in my second interview, they were like, so how would you explain what we sell to people? How would you explain our company? And I remember thinking to myself, like, I gotta pull something out of my ass. right now.
Yeah.
Because that's what I do in most job interviews. Like, especially if it's a job that I don't want, but I'm like, oh, like I'll do the interview and like see how it goes. 9 out of 10 times I'm pulling something directly out of my ass because I'm like, I gotta act and seem like I know what I'm talking about.
Right.
And I remember trying to explain. And then the guy, I think he was like, okay, he's like, yeah, that's an interesting way to describe it.
Oh no.
And I was like, is that good or bad? I managed to get another interview. So this is my third interview, which went fine. That third one was with like one of the founders of the company. And he goes, okay, he's like, sounds good. We'll get back to you in a little bit. I was like, okay. And then they messaged me like on LinkedIn like a day later being like, hey, can we talk with you again? But I want to get my other partner. Excuse me, sir.
Artie.
That's what happens when you have a dog. He was like, yeah, he's like, I want you to speak with the co-founder as well, like my co-partner founder, whatever. And I was like, sure. I was like, okay. I've never done more than 2 interviews in my life. So the fact that I already had a third, I was like, what's happening?
Right.
Like, this is too much for me. The fourth one was also like, in my professional opinion, not my best interview. And then I just never heard back from them.
That's so frustrating to get that far too.
Right? And that fourth interview was like after working hours. They're like, oh, like the only times we could do was like 5:45 p.m. Does that work for you? I was like, yeah, like I guess.
Right.
And I had another interview with them. It was like 40 minutes long. And then they're like, okay, like we'll get back to you like shortly and let you know. I was like, okay, sounds good. And then I never heard back from them. Never heard back.
Jesus.
When someone asks you to explain their product to them, like in a first interview, like you don't know the product. I think it's an odd question.
Yeah.
The whole point is when
That's
you take,
fair.
especially a sales job, you're selling yourself on, hey, here's what I'm really good at. And then you learn about the product. And that's how you're going to get good at selling it.
It's not so much a question, it's a setup.
It's a setup. It's a trap.
Yeah.
It is
what
a trap.
It is.
It is
I
a
actually
trap.
think a good answer to that could be, candidly, here's what I read about your product on your website. I'd love to learn more about it if you do take me on. But I want to understand it does X, Y, and Z,
Yep.
or X, Y, and Z for American listeners. But kind of like pushing back. I think in sales interviews, they also like when you like challenge them back.
Yes.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's funny that you said that because there have been a couple of jobs where I've gone in, I wouldn't say blind. I would always go in pretty well researched about the company, but I would go in knowing that it was a long shot that I would get it. And those were the jobs I specifically got because I kind of tore them to shreds in the interview, like for fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not for fun, but like, okay, so for example, I used to work for this huge skincare brand. And so I came in as their social media specialist at the time. And I knew that I probably won't get the job because I didn't have as much experience as other people. And I knew that there had been, I think, 2,000 applicants. And so I go in and I'm like, I got nothing to lose. I'm sitting with this woman who ended up being my manager. And she was like, okay, so I feel like you probably would have taken a look at our socials. And I was like, yeah. She's like, okay, what do you think? And I was like, okay. So I think it's bland and cold. It doesn't look friendly. It's not catering to your demographic at all. You're trying to like incentivize new people and young people to get in here. And it looks like it's for older, whatever. I kept going. And she just looked at me and smiled as I was going. I'm like, it's this. If I were clicking through, I would not stay on the page for a second. And this is what I would do. And then she was like, all right. And then I had to come in for another interview where they made me put my money where my mouth is. And they said, you need to give us a presentation on what you do within the first 90 days of the company. And I just tried my best to blow them away. And I used my personality to make them laugh because I'm like, the way I'm going to get in here is like, if they think I'm going to fit in with the team. And later on, when I got the job, they told me that's exactly what it was. They're like, there were a couple things that you did during the interview process that nobody else did. And so that's one thing. But also, we, at the end of the day, want to see who will fit in with our team the best. And that's why we chose you. And I was like, I'll take it.
Yeah.
My
fair.
imposter
Yeah,
syndrome,
awesome.
my imposter syndrome was rampant, but I realized they knew what they were getting into. So I just like rolled with it.
That's
Yeah.
fair.
Yeah.
I'll bet you were one of the only people who
Challenged.
were honest with
Yeah.
like, hey,
Yeah.
they're hiring someone because they probably knew their socials were not great.
Yes.
And I'll bet you of those 2,000 applicants, a ton of them were like, oh, it's really great. I love how you do this, this, and this.
Yeah.
I could add this. People are hiring people that they're going to have to spend time with every single day. You want to
Exactly.
know that you could enjoy the time with them. They need to be qualified, but also fit in culturally.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Exactly. And even if you're nervous, because I feel like I'm a good interviewer. I guess I am a good interviewer, but I'm always so nervous leading up to it that I just want to make sure I don't come off as nervous. Because if they feel nervous listening to me, there's no way they're going to feel excited about like bringing me on.
Yeah. I like that. I like that you challenge them. That's like, yeah, because they're probably having all these people being like, oh, I love this. I love that. It's like, okay, like we know
I
it
don't love
sucks.
this. You suck. Yeah, this is how I can change it.
Should we get into some stories? What are
Yeah.
you thinking? Yeah? Okay.
Yes.
So we like to keep it anonymous, just to be safe. Hey, so I got a story, ... I was working at a shoe store and my supervisor would constantly come in hungover and would nag and complain about her love life. Anyways, every night we would need to count out the money in the register and deposit it. She would always ask me to clean the store while she did that, even though there needed to be a witness. I've been there, retail, been there. I was like, okay, whatever, I'll just clean the store. Fast forward 4 months, and just her and I are working one night, and the store manager, district manager, and 3 police officers come barging into the store and immediately arrest her for stealing $13,000.
Oh my God.
It causes a scene. I get sent home early, and she was sent to jail.
Oh my God.
She immediately got released on bond and had to obviously pay back the store for what she stole. What's even crazier is she claims she stole the money to help her psycho ex-boyfriend, the one she would constantly nag about, get out of jail. And then it also at the end says sent from my iPhone.
That's a wild story.
Oh my.
It's also like unfortunate. Like I've heard similar stories. Like I worked in retail.
Okay, yeah.
And like there's 2 managers at the store I worked at that ended up being fired for like major theft.
Wow.
One was for something similar like this. It was like the final counts at the end weren't the same for months, and he got caught.
Yeah.
And one stole like a bunch of like the product. I don't want to say it was a shoe store.
Right.
And had taken like thousands of dollars worth of shoes.
Jesus.
And it's like, and I'm realizing this must be.
It seems like it's, I guess,
thing.
unfortunately, a common thing.
Oh yeah, kleptomania. Yeah.
This person who sent it was out of their nothing they could have done.
Yeah.
It's just
Except I hope that they wouldn't have gotten like a trickle down charge for not being a witness.
The witness, right?
You know, like I hope you have proof. I mean, the fact the person was stealing everything, I think, is proof enough that they're the ones who requested that you went around and cleaned.
Yeah. Wait, have either of you ever had to deal with? I mean, that's like employee theft. Have you ever worked in a retail job or like a restaurant or where somebody stole while you were working or tried to?
Yes.
I've had like someone try to when I was working for a cell phone company with a little kiosk, and I don't know how about you guys. I'm terrible at picking up when someone's trying to steal something.
Yeah.
Like when they're like, but with the cell phone specifically, it's a unique case because like they'll have a fraudulent credit card, but like I wasn't able to pick up on stuff like that.
Right.
But all of my coworkers knew.
Right.
And I sucked at selling cell phones. Like I could not sell a phone. But I remember one time this guy came up and he looked like he was a normal looking dude. And I was like, okay, I was like, great. Like he wants to buy a phone. Amazing. Like I'm finally gonna make a sale. Been busting my ass. And I'm finally going to make a sale.
Right.
And I'm putting in all the guy's information. I was like, I'm so close. I'm like, let's get that sweet kind of okay commission check for one sale. And I remember my coworker comes up to me and she goes, hey, she's like, you know what? You're just forgetting one thing. Let me help you out with this. And she types into like the notes section at the bottom right before I'm about to hit like purchase and confirm. This is fraud. You can't let this go through. She like types that into the thing. She's like, it's fraud. You can't let it go through. And I was like, all right, there goes my commission check.
Yeah.
So I'm like staring at like the screen, the computer, and I go,
and your heart's beating a little bit faster.
My heart was racing. So I look, I'm looking at the screen, and I look up and I go, man, I'm so sorry. Our system's being so weird right now. Can you come back like later today or maybe another day? And he goes, what? He's like, it's not working all of a sudden. I'm like, yeah, man. I was like, it happens. Like, honestly, like, I wish I knew how to fix it, but my brain technology, no way, man. All I know is phones.
I'm a dunce.
Yeah, I was like, please come back another time. And he goes, no, he's like, but like, I want to buy it now. Like, I need to buy it now. And I was like, you can't. I was like, we can't sell you the product. Like, it's not going to work. He goes, what? He's like, you can't give me the phone? I'm like, well, no. I was like, you need to pay for the phone, but like the machine and the system, like, is not working. And then my coworker's like, sir, like, you just have to come back another time. And then he left, and I was like, oh my God. And then my coworker goes, how did you not realize that was fraud? And I was like,
what kind of a question is that?
I was like, what? I was like, I don't know. I was like, I just want to make a sale. I'm just out here. Like, I'm not here to do anything. I'm just here to work and like make a sale. She goes, when the credit card looks like this, if it has this on and this, and she's like pointing out like the most random things that like to me would not, like, I would not think, oh, okay, yeah, like fraud. I'd just be like, okay, like, no, he has like a sketchy looking credit card. Like he's with a shitty bank. I don't know.
Things happen and you learn, so you know going forward.
I did not stay there very long.
That's valid.
It was a fun time. How about you?
So I was, as a teen, a cashier at this huge grocery store in Canada for 5.5 years. And there were constantly people like trying to, okay. So there was this woman, very angry. I can still kind of see her face. She was this like shorter, I don't know, German. She seemed very scary. And she would go in and like destroy the products and then come to my till and be like, I demand to pay less for this because there's a big hole in my ground beef. And I was like, I
can't say that.
And she goes, see, and she sticks her thumb in and like swirls it around. And I'm like,
ma'am,
there's other ground beef back there, ma'am. And also you're like really sus. And apparently she had been in the back throwing cans on the ground so that they'd all come out dented. And
that's like Big Daddy.
Oh yeah.
Man, it's been so long since I've seen that.
You would throw the can. You would teach the kid to throw the can on the ground, and,
so
then you get a discount. Yeah, it's like
this woman was clearly a big fan of the movie Big Daddy.
She was a big Adam Sandler fan, is what you're saying. Okay.
And this was the same woman who would come in after we have a new week of sales on products, and she'd be like, "I bought this last week, and this week it's on sale, so I expect all my money back." And we were like,
that's not how it
works. But she was so annoying that I would just call over my supervisor, and then they just like give her what they want. And then after a while I didn't see her again. But there was this man who ended up befriending me, manipulative fuck, like because I was so young. I was like 14 or something when he started coming in, because that's when I started working there. And I would recognize him and we'd be like, oh, hey, how you doing? He would chat with me. He'd get this huge $300 order. And I would just, shoot the shit with him. And I'd be like, yeah, he's my friend. Like, I'm getting to know my customers, I'm being such a good cashier. And then at the end of it, he would be like, oh, you know what? I forgot my credit card, but let me tell you the number. Just type it in. And I was like, all right. I didn't know, right? So I just type it in. And then after a while, I noticed that he never had his credit card. He would always be typing it in or getting me to type it in. And then after a while, I think he had come to me with some sort of like conspiracy thing about bees. Like he started showing a very weird side of him and then forgetting his credit card. And then
always starts with credit cards and then of course bees.
Yeah.
Totally normal. Like a grown man venting to a 14-year-old girl about bees.
Yeah, about bees, committing credit card fraud. Like
Super casual.
Yeah. And it probably took me a year of him coming in because I didn't know shit about credit card fraud as a 14-year-old.
Yeah.
For me to realize, oh, he was getting me to commit credit card fraud. He got so much free shit because of me because I didn't know.
So it would go through.
It would go through.
But you just don't know who it was like. Someone else. You memorize a number on a card. I feel like now that couldn't. Like, you can't. That wouldn't work. You couldn't do that, right?
Yeah, you couldn't do that. They implemented a lot of training. Probably some of the reason why was because of what I was doing, and he probably was swindling other people when I wasn't there too. And they also changed their systems, so you can't just like type in the number
a card
and press enter and have it charge that card.
No 14-year-old is going to know about credit card fraud.
I don't feel bad about it. No. I'm just like, man, you swindled me, and you're probably in jail now. Probably.
Yeah. Probably. That's wild.
Yeah.
Okay, here's another one. This one is called Crazy Drama.
Ooh,
in my last job, I had the most toxic, insane boss ever. Haven't we all at our last job? She would call me and ask, are you on the company cell? And if I was, she would say, I'll wait till you're back at the office to call you on the landline. This was insane. I did the company banking and would leave at 3:30 to get the banking done. And since I finished at 4 p.m., would go home from the bank. That seems fair. She would call at 10 minutes to 4 and say, could you go back to the office so we could talk on the landline? Having to go all the way back to the office so she could talk was crazy, as she could have said it on the cell, which makes sense. Totally insane and a waste of time. I quit.
Oh, I thought there was going to be some insidious punchline.
Yeah.
I mean, there probably is. Like she seems like she was being very sus. We're all reading it. Like, what are we missing?
Like,
I mean,
hang on.
I feel like
can I be frank?
Yeah. Yes.
Not that crazy.
I mean, I feel like it's more annoying.
It's odd behavior from a boss.
Yeah.
Because I'm wondering,
also, please keep sending emails in, listener.
We appreciate his email.
Maybe we'll cut this out, but
it's good.
So I feel bad. No, that's odd behavior. Hang on.
I feel like there's probably more that happened, leading up to making her quit. But if this was like the final straw, then I get that.
Yeah.
I get that. I'm going to assume that more happened before this. But if you quit because of just this, I don't think you should quit.
Yeah.
That's fair.
You probably could have stuck it.
Yeah.
It would just be good material to be like, hey, guess what my fucking boss did today? Had to go back to the office. I was trying to go home after doing the banking. It's annoying. Now I have to go back and talk on the landline. So I quit. Be like, what? Why would you do that?
Listener who sent this, because we're keeping it anonymous, send us
more
Yeah.
context.
I'm
We need
feeling
more
it is
context.
more context.
If this was if this was a one-off, I think you made a rash emotional decision in that moment. And if it wasn't, tell us more. I want to hear
Yeah.
more about what this boss did.
Yeah.
I want to know more
And
about
let's
that
talk
too.
through it.
Yeah.
But thank you very much for submitting it. Sorry for shitting on that a little bit.
And here's another one. Okay, someone said they gave an idea for something that can happen on Instagram, a good idea for a reel. They said, hey, I also work customer service, and there's something people do that really pisses me off, and I think it'll be a good idea for a reel on Instagram. When people with oversimplistic names call and they have the need to spell their whole fucking name, like if I'm stupid that I wouldn't know how to spell your name, Michael Roberts. I'm assuming that's just a random name. Not only that, but they take forever spelling their name. I'm trying to think in my history of working customer service if that's happened.
I've only seen it happen when the name is a normal name, but it's spelt a little
Yes.
off.
Yeah.
Yes. And sometimes I'll get them to spell their name if I think I'm mishearing them.
Right.
It's a great call.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much. But then I feel bad if it's like, if their name is Michael Rogers, I'm like, can you spell that for me? In their mind, they're like, this guy doesn't fucking know how to spell Michael Rogers. But then he like spells it correctly. And I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, thanks. Like, just want to make sure.
Well, I
Make
get
sure
a
I
lot
got it
like
right.
at Starbucks, for example. I'm like, Zach, and they're like, what's the name? I'm like, Zach. And they go, oh, like, how do you spell that? Like with an H or a K?
Yeah.
And like, I do spell it with an H, which I guess isn't the, like, I think K is a little more popular. But like for Starbucks, it's to call my name. I don't think it really matters.
Right.
But I always say when they ask me, I'm like, I appreciate that you're asking, but I'm like, it's H, but it doesn't matter. It's just to call it my name. Like, it's okay.
You know what's hilarious is at Starbucks and at any other establishment that takes my name, I don't ever tell them how to spell it because it ends up in like a really funny, different way that they
I
spelled
imagine
it.
your name
that's
would be
fair.
like, what do you usually get?
Okay, so first of all, when I introduce myself to people at like a party, say, and when we're sober at the beginning of the party, I'm like, hey, I'm Geneva, but you can call me G. And I was like, everyone calls me G. I mean, I have a gazillion nicknames, but like that's the most common one. And I knew that they weren't going to remember it because they're about to get drunk. So I'm like, you can call me G. And they're like, no, I'm going to remember that. And I'm like, don't be a hero. I know you're not going to remember this. And they're like, no. And then the party goes on and they're like, Genevieve. I'm like, that is not... And the amount of times I get Genevieve from substitute teachers, librarians, Starbucks people, whatever they call me Genevieve. But back to the spelling, when I tell people, oh, my name's Geneva, I don't expect them to get it right. But I think it's hilarious when they figure out new, innovative ways to spell it wrong. And what I get very often at Starbucks, of all things, is Janiva.
Janova.
Janova.
Or I think it'd be Geneva.
Geneva. Yeah. That's how you say my name in Australian, actually.
Geneva.
Geneva.
Geneva. That is.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And then I get a lot of people reading my name. Like substitute teachers in particular have read my name, which is the name of a very prolific convention.
I was gonna say, I
Right?
think that's what, if we had just met, I may have even said this when we first met. You're like, hey, Geneva, I'd be like the convention?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I had a nickel, Zach, I'd have a lot of nickels for how many people mentioned the convention. And they just call me convention
so-
I
actually.
thought I was
as a
being
nickname.
witty too. I thought, like, I'm funny. I'm
Yeah.
original. I'm funny. Yeah.
Like, do people call
Yeah.
you GC, like for short, like Geneva Convention, like
Oh,
GC?
that is a new one.
you
I
go.
really thought I had discovered
You've heard it
every
all.
Just when you thought you've heard them all.
every
You
format.
haven't.
Yeah. But substitute teachers in particular call me Gunniva. And like that, you have to put in extra
That's-
work to
Yeah.
forget.
And they're supposed
the
to be
convention.
teaching?
You're supposed to be teaching me.
Yeah. That's,
I don't
Teaching
trust like
me.
that. I don't trust like that. Speaking of
Gunniva.
Starbucks and names, this made me think of something funny. So like most of the time, like with my name being Max, you best believe I'm gonna get Matt and sometimes Mark,
Mark.
which is interesting.
I get Matt. Mark is surprising.
Don't
I
get
got Mark
Yeah.
a couple times, but I was like, okay, it is what it is. Maybe they misheard. But when I was working in retail at a mall, there was a Starbucks next to the store that I was at. And I became friends with everybody there because I would always go and get a drink before I started my shift. And they would hook it up sometimes with a free drink. You know, I would be like, okay, come in. I can't give you free shit, but like I'll give you a discount on stuff, whatever it is. And I realized I never got their names because a lot of them never wore the name tag. Or like
Blasphemous.
right?
Yeah.
Or if they
Terrible.
did, I just like didn't really think about it. And there was one time I went in, it was right before my shift. I go into the Starbucks and I see a girl there who I see all the time, whose name I don't know. And she's like, hey, how's it going? I was like, good, how are you? We're shooting the shit. I was like, oh, give me the usual. She's like, okay. And I'm waiting for my drink. And she goes, hey, she's like, here you go. Like, have a great day. Like, enjoy your shift. I was like, thanks so much. I take my drink
Oh my God.
and I look at it and there's a name written on the drink. And I just want you to take a guess. You probably won't get it, but I want you to guess what name you think was written on my Starbucks drink.
Well, was it like a
It wasn't
mishearing
even-
of your name, or like it's just like
it was
totally open
just,
territory?
It was just wrong.
Oh,
Can you give us a clue?
I had a clue, but it might give too much away. It started with a P.
What?
Starts with the letter P.
Philip.
Yeah.
I got it.
It was Philip. With one L. With one L.
With one L in
one L.
particular.
And I remember like walking out, going into my store and like looking at my cup and being like, you know what? I can't even be mad because I don't know what her name is. So if I was making an order for her, I probably would have written like Katrina. And then she would have been like, my name's fucking Amy, you piece of shit.
Can I give you some tips for, and maybe the listeners will get something out of this too, for when you, as somebody who's very bad with names, getting someone's name, like either ensuring you remember it or like getting it when you're in a situation where like you don't know it but need it.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
First of all, apparently I think like there's studies that show if you say a person's name three times in your first conversation with them, it helps get it in there. So if I was meeting you, I'd be like, oh, Geneva, really nice to meet you, Geneva. I would just like try to say it a couple times. That's a little weird, but if I forget the name, and I've been in a lot of situations where like I've known someone, I've met them many times,
right,
and it's inappropriate for me to be like, hey, can you remind me your name?
Yeah.
Right.
What I'll do is, if I forgot your name, it would be not cool if I didn't know your name.
At this point,
At this point. Yeah. First of all, try to introduce you to somebody in the room and try to get it that way. And if that doesn't work, I'd be like, sorry, remind me your name. And then you, for a second, the person would be offended. So I could be like, it's Geneva. And I'd be like, no, I'm like, I know your name's your last name. I just forgot, like, how do you, like, I forgot your last name? Yeah. And like, and like, that's like last resort, need it. Yeah. Keep it in the back pocket. It works like 50% of the time in terms of them like thinking you genuinely didn't remember. Like we're trying to get their last name, but that's something you could pull out if you're in a pinch and need a name.
Yeah. I've tried to do that before.
What's your name? Yeah.
There's this dude named Ryan. I forgot his name. And I went to high school with him like the whole way through. Mm-hmm. And so I was sitting beside him and we were going to add each other on Facebook, even though I didn't fucking know his name. And so I was like, remind me of your name again, like something like that. And he says he gives me his last name. And I was like, what's your first name? Because I couldn't get around it because he gave me his last name.
Right.
And like, what am I going to do? Just type in the last name right beside him as he's watching my screen? I was like, I just need to take the L on this. Like, I don't know your first name.
So I have two strategies. One is for when I want to remember someone's name. The other one is when I feel like someone's forgotten my name and I don't want them to feel embarrassed about asking for my name.
So that's really good of you. I think I try to do the same thing, but you try to get proactive about it.
So my strategy for that is if I'm talking with someone and I have a good feeling that they don't remember what my name is, I'll try to like tell a story or some sort of situation where I'll be like, I'll talk about myself in third person. So I'll be like, yeah, well, I was like saying the other day, like, oh, like Max, like, come on, you've done this so many times before. Like you could do it again. I'll make sure to mention myself.
You are a generous spirit.
Yeah, thank you so much.
When you ever do, sometimes like I'll take that approach. If let's say it's the three of us and there's a fourth person who I think may not remember one of your names.
Yes.
I'll try to use the group's names a lot to try to help the person out too. Like in the same vein. Like,
that's also that's a good thing to do.
Yeah.
But when it comes to me trying to remember someone's name, a lot of the time I'll just say like, hey, like I feel like I know your name, but I don't want to get it wrong.
That's a good way to say it.
Which is another one. And also, I act as though I'm like, I feel like we've like seen each other before. Like, but like, remind me your name again.
Yeah.
Like, even though I've probably never met this person in my life, I'll always be like, I feel like you look so familiar.
Yeah.
Like,
when in doubt, lean on nice to see you rather than nice to meet you.
Yeah.
So like if we're ever at a gathering and I'm saying to someone like, you look so familiar, like I feel like we know each other, there's a good chance I do not know them, but I just can't remember what their fucking name is.
I'll just be grinning behind you like, I know what
actually
you
had
go over and be like, he totally forgot what your fucking name is.
Last night I was at a Halloween party and there's this guy who's like friends with the friends who were throwing the party, and I've met him around 10 times, like many times over the years, like many times. And I saw him like, oh hey man, nice to see you. And he was like, hey dude, Jeremy, nice to meet you. And it wasn't in a crazy costume. Like I was like this hoodie was like part of my costume. And I said, I'm like, oh man, like we've met. He goes, oh yeah. And this guy's also like kind of an asshole. He just like is kind of an asshole. Like, then I went up to my friends. I was like, nothing puts you in your place like saying what up to Jeremy and him introducing himself.
It's classic Jeremy.
Classic Jeremy.
Yeah,
it's just like Jeremy to do that.
Yeah.
Jay is so bad with names too. And not so long ago, his friend's wife, he went up to her and introduced himself. And she's like, we've met 6 times. Yeah. We met 6 times at like major events. You are friends with my husband. And you need to remember my name.
That's bad.
Oh God.
Yeah. It's a tough moment. It is. That's
Yeah.
why I always tell people call me G. Like, I don't expect you to remember my name.
That's fair.
But don't refuse to call me by the short form.
It's actually much easier to remember a unique name than.
I agree.
Okay. I have like a tiering system for names. This is more around kids' names.
Okay.
When I was thinking about I have 2 kids and I have a bunch of friends with kids. And so this tiering system that somebody explained to me was there's 4 tiers of names.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
Tier 1 is you personally know like 3 or 4 people with this name.
Right.
Max, Zach would probably both be tier 1 names.
Mike,
Okay.
Dave. Yeah.
Mike, Dave, Matt,
Yeah.
Josh.
Yeah.
No offense to those. It's not not that these are bad. There's a lot of very popular tier 1 names still, but like
Right.
tier 2 would be you know at least one person personally with this name.
Okay.
That's just tier 2?
Yeah.
Okay,
You know,
okay.
but like personally know one
We still
person.
got 2 more tiers.
Yeah. got 2 more
then
tiers.
tier 3 is it is a name. It could be
It is a name.
it could be from a show. It could be like you don't know anyone with this name personally, but like
Okay.
it is a name that exists.
Okay, gotcha.
It could be a character from a show.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
And then tier 4 is like it's not a name. Like this is like the first time it's being used as a name is right now.
Like,
Right.
is it Apple?
yeah, Apple would be a tier 4 name. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, like now, although now technically because what's his name, Chris Martin and
Yeah.
Gwyneth Paltrow named their kid Apple.
Well,
like if you're
would that move it
really
to tier
following my
3?
rules, it makes it a tier 3.
Tier
I
3.
see.
But
That's
like
so
it would be a
true.
tier. It would be a tier 4.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
it's definitely, or you know, it was definitely a tier 4 before this person named their kid. The My Name is Earl lead star. I don't even know
Oh,
his name.
Jason Lee.
Jason Lee. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. He
I haven't even watched
Yeah.
that show, but I know Jason Lee.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
he had a son and named him Pilot Inspector.
Like his like the
Wait,
First of all, is
first
it
name Pilot Inspector.
is that like a boy's name? Or,
It's a boy.
so middle name is Inspector.
Nope.
Like first name is Pilot
Oh,
Inspector.
Wait, hold
one
on.
name.
Jason Lee's kid's name is Pilot,
Pilot
Inspector.
Inspector.
I'm actually
Pull
looking
that
this
up.
up.
I need to see this.
I'm looking this up right now. Hold my mic.
That's
Okay.
Oh my God.
Pilot Inspector Lee.
that's okay. I'm gonna go out on
With
a
a K.
I'm
Inspector
gonna
with
say
a K.
that's not cool.
But also, why are you naming it?
Like for the kid, I feel-
Inspector with a K, as if you need to make it more unique than it is. Why do that?
the K and inspect like the
What?
yeah.
Pilot Inspector Lee.
Yep.
Is there?
That's like
They have a son, Pilot Inspector, born in.
2003.
So Pilot Inspector's 20 years old.
He's 20 years old?
Their son's name was inspired by He's Simple, He's Dumb, He's the Pilot by rock band Granddaddy.
That is so
Like-
niche.
That's
Extremely
very
niche.
niche.
That's-
Like, and
wow,
that's the
that's-
only kid.
The only kid, too.
Well, now if they have
Jesus
another one,
Does he
they
go
gotta
by-
call him like Health Inspector Lee.
Or does he go by?
Health Inspector.
I wonder what he goes by. Like PI. Actually,
PI.
That actually be kind of cool.
PI.
I would hope he goes by.
that's- Yeah,
Yeah, I would
that's
hope he
kinda
goes by Spectre.
Or Spec.
Spec.
Wait, Spec's
Yeah.
kind of good.
Or Pi.
Pi-
Pi.
Pilot.
Okay.
Captain.
You know what?
Captain
It's
Lee.
it's growing.
It's
on
growing
me.
on me. It's not too bad. Maybe it'll become a tier 2 after a while.
I'm like actually
Like that's a hard
tripping,
tier
though.
4.
That's a
That's
hard
like a tier
4.
5.
Wow.
Yeah. That's like never, ever been done before. You're
Yeah.
the first person on the planet to do it.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh my
That's,
God.
And like, what a legacy.
I don't know. I'm so
There's
happy I brought
no
up my
one-
tiering system and learned this
Yeah.
Yeah,
fact
I
about
love
Jason
that.
Lee.
Wow.
We really caught on.
But the point, by the way, of my tiering system was
Yeah.
I think your name would probably be a tier 3.
3. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've only ever met one other Geneva in my entire life, and it wasn't until I was 27.
Would mine be a tier 1 or a tier 2 only because it's just Max?
Like, it's not
Oh, it's not
Max, it's not
Maxwell
Maxwell.
or
Yes.
Maxwell.
I think it still would be a tier 1.
Sick.
Yeah.
Also, it's interesting.
Wait,
I think like
oh.
now, no. But so the numbers make it seem like it's a bad. Like I think nowadays with like kids' names, a lot of people want to like a tier 3, tier 4 name. Like
Yeah.
they want, like, I want the only kid with this name.
Yeah.
But there are a bunch of tier 1 names that are still very popular names.
Yes.
So, like for example, like there's like Max actually is still like I think a pretty common name amongst like kids being born like this year. And
I
last
think so.
Jack still a very
Yeah.
Jack
a
is
common name. It's like a
massive.
Jack.
and these are
Emma
and I think
has never fallen from the
and
top of the list.
I think saying tier 1 is like discounting the name. I think they're classic names. There's like
Yes.
a classic name that still sticks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it still hits.
Yeah.
I would consider you a tier 2 for me because you're the only Max I know.
Let's
Wow.
go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing with the
Yeah.
tiering system.
Yeah.
What a tier
Oh my God.
Yeah.
a tier 2 for
What did
you
you say?
could be a tier like 1 for someone else.
Yeah.
A tier 3 for one of us could be a tier 1. You know what I mean? It's just
like,
interesting.
Let me
Yeah.
just say, I'm honored.
I can't believe he's the only Max you know.
Yeah.
I'm so happy.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That's so great. I'm going to make that my entire personality.
I love that. I'm the only Geneva you guys know, right?
Yeah.
I'm the only Geneva you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
I do
But
know
heard
another
the name,
person who
which makes
goes
tier
by
3.
G, but her name is Gergana.
Gergana.
Yeah.
Now
she goes by
that's
Dee.
also
That's
a
a tier.
tier
That's
three.
I think that's a tier 4 right there. Although actually, but then unless it's like another language, 'cause
It's-
don't
I
know.
think it's a- I think
realize
it's a
I'm, like, biting
Russian-
my tongue. I just don't know the
Right.
language.
I think it's a
Yeah.
Russian name,
Yeah.
so I would still list it
Okay.
as a tier somewhere between 2 and 3 maybe. But if you're Russian, it's probably a tier.
I'm
1.
also realizing my system is like very
White.
Yeah, it's like in like so I'm trying to like I'm just stop talking, but like I mean it doesn't take any other languages into account.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. I know we're at time, but on that note, I
Yeah.
want to explain that I worked at this one daycare in university. It was one of the worst jobs I've ever had. That's a story for another time. But there's a brother and sister there who had the longest names of anything I've ever heard. And they were not white. I think they were from Nigeria, I think. And their names were Oluwashimilari and Oluwatomiloba.
That was the full name. And
Like that's the
one name.
first name.
First name, Oluwashimilari and Oluwatomiloba.
It sounds
we
like
call
a-
them Shimilari and Tomi for sure.
Sounds like something that I would hear on an episode of House.
Yes.
But I wonder
Yeah.
are those common names where they're from?
Probably common
Like,
names
isn't that
where
like-
they're from.
yeah.
Like
Wow.
I think maybe Olawa has something to do. I mean, I'm fucking Icelandic and Norwegian. Like I don't know anything. But in Iceland, your last name is based on who your father is, etc. So and same with I'm pretty sure in like Sweden and stuff like that. So maybe Olawa is like the prefix.
Yeah.
Damn.
Who knows?
That's
Who knows?
wild.
For me, that's a tier 4. But in Nigeria,
But Nigeria
could
might be- it
easily
might be a tier 1.
Yeah.
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 Wow. With that being said, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
This has been Thank You Kindly. Thank you kindly
Thank you
for listening.
kindly.
Thank you kindly for
Kindly.
watching.
So
and
kindly. We'll see you next
soon.
time.
See you next time.